Hey everybody, thanks for hopping on here with me tonight. I am Emily Radke, Gold Brand Ambassador with Plexus. Um, I have a lot of new moms, young moms, and expecting moms in my network. And so I get asked the question a lot, are these supplements that you take safe during pregnancy? So I thought I would share with you all a little bit about my experience with Plexus and pregnancy and breastfeeding and all the stuff, all the things. So the short answer is yes, it is safe. And it's actually really important, but we'll get to that later. My disclaimer though is that I am not a doctor. So of course, if you have any questions or concerns, you should talk with your OB. When I first started my supplements, I was 11 weeks pregnant with my second baby. COVID had just gone through our house and I was about 8 weeks pregnant when I got that. I was suffering from all of the normal pregnancy exhaustion, but it was like a double whammy because the fatigue was definitely my worst symptom from COVID as well. Thankfully, we all had very minor symptoms, but the fatigue kicked my butt. And like I said, it was like a double whammy being in that stage of pregnancy and COVID on top of that. So I was in full morning sickness swing that lasted, of course, all day. It never just lasts in the morning. And I was just desperate to feel better. I had a 22-month-old to chase around and I could barely keep up with him. I remember walking down the sidewalk with him one day and thinking, my body is so tired, I can hardly move. How in the world am I ever going to keep up with two? And at that point, it was a real effort to do anything. So I had, of course, talked to my OB about that. And he recommended a few different things like B12, Unisum, and an antacid. I was not crazy about taking anything. The B12 I could get on board with because it was a vitamin, but I was really leery to take any kind of medication. So I did try the vitamin B12 and then I tried the Unisum, and both were, they were somewhat helpful. The antacid I knew would only make things worse in the long run in terms of like how it works and what it does. So I chose not to take that. But I'll back up here for a minute and fill you in on my background. I have a degree in physical therapy and a certification in personal training, and I am a health coach. So along with those things comes a lot of new training in nutrition and different supplementation. And so I already had quite a few feelings and opinions regarding like what I wanted to put into my own body and just like, being hesitant with that kind of stuff. So anyways, back to my early stages of pregnancy. After a few weeks of trying the remedies that my OB had suggested, I was still feeling extremely worn out. COVID had passed, but my restless legs had kicked back in, and so had my headaches. I only had restless legs one time ever in my life before, and that was during my first pregnancy. And after Eli was born, they went away. But now that the restless legs were back, they were keeping me up at night, making the fatigue even worse. And the headaches just made it hard to get through the days. I had seen several posts from my friends about this pink drink. And actually about 6 months prior, my long lost friend, Sarah Marie, had reached out to me about it. But of course I said, no, thank you, but no. It just so happened that she reached out to me a second time around August when we were talking about having another baby. And so at that time, I was directly in your shoes, feeling as though now was not a good time to start anything new. But then, coincidentally, I had another girl reach out to me about this pink drink when I was just about 11 weeks along. I knew this girl was also friends with Sarah Marie, and so I assumed that they were like working together to talk to me about Plexus. So my response was, oh, Sarah Marie must have talked to you already. Turns out that actually was not the case. But now looking back, I see it was God's way of nudging me to open my eyes and ears to see what these girls were sharing with me. I fully believe he places certain people in our paths for a reason. And little did I know that this pink drink would be the answer to my prayers for feeling better, keeping up with my family, chasing my near 2-year-old. And I didn't know it at the time, but it would also be my vehicle to transition to a stay-at-home mom one day, which was really what was on my heart. So after carefully reading the labels and learning asking questions and learning about the products, learning that they were super straightforward and clean, I decided to give it a try. And at first, when I started, I was skeptically optimistic. I knew that if these products were really going to heal any root issues, then it would be a process. So I didn't have high expectations about feeling better anytime soon. But about a week into taking my new supplements, I noticed that I was craving water a lot, like all the time. I didn't relate that to my new products. I just blamed pregnancy. But then like 1 to 2 weeks later, I noticed my sugar cravings were almost non-existent. And that is coming from a girl who eats ice cream every single day. Then I really started to pay attention and I was like, okay, something's got to be working here. And I got excited about it. Before I knew it, my headaches were gone and so were my restless legs, which I could not believe. Like my mind was just blown when the restless legs went away. I had no idea that something neurological could be linked to gut health. And as I've learned with Plexus and from my outside work, the gut-brain axis is so strong and so real. Our neurotransmitters and so many other things directly related to brain health happens in our gut. So it only makes sense that if our guts are not happy, then neither is our brain and neither is the rest of our body. So fast forward a few more weeks and it was time for my glucose test. So was that like 27, 28 weeks in pregnancy, something like that. So with my first pregnancy, I failed the 1 hour test and I had to go back and do the 3 hour. And that was actually really devastating for me because for 2 years prior to getting pregnant and through my whole first pregnancy, I exercised regularly. I like every day. I ate really clean. I was really restrictive on the type of foods that I allowed myself to have. For example, before I was pregnant with my first, I went 100% grain free. And then, for a while outside of that time, and even while I was pregnant, I didn't eat anything processed. So I went into my glucose test with my first pregnancy feeling really good about things. But then after failing, I felt like all of my efforts were not really doing anything to help me at this point. I mean, obviously they were doing me some good, but it was just like a big letdown. So with my glucose test approaching during my second pregnancy, I did not have super high hopes as my eating habits and exercise routines hadn't been nearly up to par compared to the last go around because now I have a toddler and, feed them whatever you can get in their mouths. So anyways, I didn't have high expectations. I figured that if I didn't pass the first one, that I probably wasn't going to pass this one. So I was nervous about it. But guess what happened? I passed. I passed on the first 1 hour. And at this point, I had been on my products and drinking my pink drink every single day for 5 months. And when I got those results, my mind was literally blown. Couldn't believe it. I was so excited. A few other things that started to dawn on me were the fact that I was going to the bathroom more regularly, like every day, which had never been a thing for me before. I was a 2 to 3 time a weeker. And along with inconsistent bathroom schedule also comes a great deal of bloating and, just feeling crummy and uncomfortable all the time. I also have hypothyroidism, to be more specific, an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's, which I will be actually covering in a few weeks on our Plexus page. So be sure to check that out. And one of the many symptoms that comes with Hashi's is being super sensitive to cold, hence the sweater, and feeling cold all the time. Living here in Wisconsin, that's kind of a big deal. But what I started noticing was that I wasn't feeling like that chilled to the bone feeling that I had been feeling before and all the time. I was always so cold. I couldn't even stand to be outside without shivering uncontrollably. So I'll be completely honest. Up until the point of my glucose test during my Plexus journey, I wasn't sure if some of these issues were actually being resolved by the products working, or if some of the changes were related to my hormones changing because of pregnancy. Like I said, I was skeptically optimistic. But once I started seeing these symptoms that I had been dealing with change, I knew deep down that this was not coincidental timing. My belief in these products was growing, and I began realizing how powerful they could be for other people. My grandma with diabetes, insert blood sugar regulation. My cousin with anxiety, insert gut health. My aunt with MS, insert inflammation. My friend struggling with obesity and weight gain, and the list goes on. I was like catching the vision, and I started seeing the bigger picture. And I knew that if I had this amazing tool on my hands, I needed to talk about it. And those people that I just mentioned, that's just the beginning. We all know people in our lives who struggle with blood sugar balance, inflammation, and gut health. If you Google like 95% of any health related issue, they will all trace back to either blood sugar balance, inflammation, or gut health. And Plexus products target all three of those things. So it's like, why wouldn't you? That's just amazing. Like, why wouldn't you share that? So anyways, I finished out my pregnancy with great health. I went through my second cesarean delivery and months of postpartum with more energy and feeling more rested, caring for a newborn and a toddler than I had the first go around with just one baby. When my daughter was just 3 days old, my milk had already started coming in. And for the next several months, my supply was so great, I was able to store enough breast milk for nearly the whole next year. And I'll just be honest, like with my first, I didn't have an issue with supply, but even with Grace, with my second, my husband even noticed, like, wow, like where's all of this coming from? So it was definitely an increase. One other really big difference that I noticed between babies was my son, Eli, had GI issues from the start. He was a spitter upper to the point where I called the pediatrician and the lactation nurse a few times in fear that maybe he wasn't keeping enough down. Although if you ever see baby pictures of him or him, his little pudgy rolls would tell you otherwise. But I was a new mom, so I was just like worried about it. And he also did not go to the bathroom normally. It was like one time a week. And it was to the point where I was scared to take him out when it was like creeping up on that day when I knew he was going to go, because it was like, it would just be so much and such a mess. So that was not normal. And his longest stretch was 14 days without going, which is also not normal. But his pediatrician said, nope, it's fine. Nothing to worry about. It wasn't until I started him on our kids line probiotic when he was about 18 months old that he started going regularly and every day. My daughter, on the other hand, has had multiple BMs every day since the day she was born, minimal episodes of any kind of spit up. So just night and day difference between the two of them. My son was also a terrible sleeper. He would be up like every 20 to 30 minutes for like the first 5 months of his life. My daughter, on the other hand, she was a great sleeper, getting up like 1 or 2 times a night since the day we brought her home. She has been able to self-soothe. She's just more like a calm and relaxed mannerisms overall. So those were different. And I know every baby is different, but those things were just like, Plexus was the difference. Plexus was the difference between those two. And having a healthy system for mom and a healthy gut lining for mom while you're pregnant is just so crucial to pass that on to your baby, and get them ready, get their immune systems going and everything for when they come into the world. So that is my journey through pregnancy with Plexus and the differences between my 2 pregnancies. So if anybody has questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, or otherwise I would encourage you to go back and get in touch with the person who invited you here. Ask them questions, share your thoughts, your takeaways. We always love to hear feedback. Otherwise, thanks for joining me tonight and have a great week, everybody.